The city of Los Sueños is home to a host of malignant entities. Violent, volatile, and often extreme in their methods. The city is a geographic hotbed of criminal activity. Cartels supporting the Los Locos del Pacifico street gang tied to narcotics distribution and manufacture, as well as gun running and smuggling. Rampant crime in the infamous 213 Park neighborhood, including the torture and subsequent death of a patrolman. Disgruntled veterans, deranged feminist cultists, shadowy human traffickers, and an extremely violent rogue paramilitary organization. The odds are truly stacked against D Platoon. But what if they were engineered that way? What if these difficulties were all manufactured, created, and sown by an invisible hand? To understand the nature of the beast, this guiding force hidden behind every action and inaction taken by D Platoon and others, we must acknowledge and understand several things. We must understand the nature of the USIA. We must understand how several suspects D Platoon is tasked with apprehending relate to the USIA and Judge as a whole. We must understand David Beaumont, his characterization and background. We must understand and acknowledge the CIA's past human experimentation, their motivations and goals. Finally, we can narrow our scope of focus and home in on the events of Boiling Point. More specifically, the events following and during the Elysian operation. Strap in. This is a roller coaster. The USIA, or United States Intelligence Agency, is a stand-in for their real-life counterpart, the CIA, better known as the Central Intelligence Agency. The USIA is a global organization featured heavily throughout the game, although most often concealed behind redacted lines or circumstantial evidence. The player character, David Judge Beaumont, is a former member of the USIA, as well as suspects Gerard Scott and Elaine Raskin. Curiously enough, both Scott and Raskin reference Judge separately. Both times are in reference to a cohort, one that failed tremendously, one that is about to bloom. For clarification, a cohort is a group of people with a shared set of characteristics. A poster found at the 4U gas station, as well as outside the LSPD headquarters on a bulletin board, references the first cohort and USIA surveillance. During another mission, the apprehension of former USIA analyst Gerard Scott, a list is present revealing leaked names of these cohort members. Many of these cohort members serve within positions of power. Keep this in mind. We'll circle back to it momentarily. To understand the relationship between Judge, Raskin, and Scott, we must take a walk throughout history. The common denominator between these three individuals on the surface is service within the USIA. Early on, we had established the USIA being a stand-in for the CIA, or perhaps a mixture between the CIA, DIA, and the NSA. We know Elaine Raskin and Gerard Scott are former special agents, analysts. But where does Judge fit into this equation? Detective Sidney Reed, while probing into David's past, uncovers he had spent considerable time in the armed forces. He had also had most of his post-service records redacted. Dr. Green, the psychologist attached to D Platoon, has a file in his office referring to Beaumont's military service. There is no official branch listed, though it references multiple deployments. Judge refers to himself and his teammates as just kids in the desert, and that he doesn't even know why they were there. Following military service, David was indoctrinated into the USIA. This is not uncommon with combat veterans, specifically those with special operations backgrounds. The real-life equivalent, the CIA, has an entire department known as the Special Activities Division that deals directly in combat operations. These include high-profile raids, high-value target recovery, and targeted eliminations. Judge served a high-profile kinetic role within the USIA for an undisclosed amount of time, prior to his service in the LSPD. Funnily enough, did you know that David's first assignment wasn't in Los Sueños, but rather Chicago? Following military service, Judge joined the Chicago Police Department and participated in their SWAT unit, It is unknown when he joined, but circa 2017 he was involved in a disastrous response to a mass casualty event. This is known as the 2017 Chicago nightclub catastrophe, of which Judge was the sole survivor. An undisclosed time later, Judge had moved to Reno, Nevada, and had also joined their SWAT team. Before we continue, there is an important piece of lore to keep in mind. David is canonically married with 3 children. His wife, Elizabeth, mysteriously disappeared, and the status of his children is unknown. According to the wiki, following surgery received for injuries sustained in the nightclub massacre, Elizabeth had told Judge that Nevada would help him find himself. She disappeared, and suddenly within the Reno Police Department, Judge had made a fast friend that he refers to as Evan. Evan promised to never lead Judge astray. Though Judge is hazy on the details of their friendship, he also admittedly doesn't remember much about Reno, or any of his past for that matter. Judge's past is ill-defined, chaotic, tumultuous, and heavily redacted. Following D Platoon's raid on the Elysian Hotel and Resort, Beaumont's co-workers begin to question his background, chiefly Detective Sidney Reed. It isn't until the events of Boiling Point that Judge decides to take a deeper look into his own past. Into the Black Mirror we go. After the events of the Elysian raid, we begin to find evidence compiled by Detective Reed specifically digging into Judge's background. She also complains about bizarre sketches being left on her desk, shown here. They resemble the mannequins found in Elysian's secret meeting room. We also see the Mariposa lily flower cropping up in hand-drawn sketches and in evidence photos from the Elysian raid. Scrambled articles regarding the death of the architect, Marcus Fletcher, direct messages between Judge and an unidentified source, and handwritten notes question whether Judge is related to a shadow organization called the MLO. Something I find interesting regarding the mission at the Elysian is its name, 3-letter triad. At first glance, I think of the alphabet agencies, the ATF, CIA, NSA, FBI, and DIA. That would make sense in our real-world context. But, seeing as how both of the intelligence agencies represented in Ready or Not are 4-character abbreviations, this leaves one actor. The MLO. Who are the MLO? Why does Detective Reed believe they are connected to everything wrong with Los Sueños? Why has she fallen so deep into this obsession? These questions will be answered. Before we continue, we must go another meta level deeper. The CIA is no stranger to human rights violations, plausible deniability, or torture. Admittedly, they come with the territory. Intelligence organizations operate at the highest standard of secrecy, to such a degree that the existence of entire divisions are questioned by the public and other CIA members alike, whispered about in hushed tones. It's the nature of clandestine intelligence. Agencies have an unlimited black budget of biblical proportions, and a uniquely diverse think tank of doctors, operators, psychologists, and scientists. When you combine unlimited funding with human curiosity in the shadow of an unstable geopolitical climate, you get horrific results. MKUltra is the codename for a CIA program involving illegal human experimentation. The project was the brainchild of Sidney Gottlieb, a doctor of biochemistry who received his degree from the prestigious Caltech University. Gottlieb had several intentions with the project: to create and refine a truth serum for use in interrogation, to alter human thoughts and behavior, weaponize psychoactive substances, and to program agents. These agents, both foreign actors and domestic operatives, were referred to as sleeper agents. Using mind control to program kidnapped foreign agents to topple their respective home organizations sounds genius, right? As a form of psychological warfare, the distrust and panic that would spread would cause hysteria. It's effective, deliberate, and terrifying. Here are a series of direct quotes outlining desired outcomes from the officially released MKUltra transcripts. Hypnotically induced anxieties. Hypnotically increasing ability to learn and recall complex written matter. hypnotically increasing ability to observe and recall complex arrangements of physical objects. The deputy director of the CIA revealed that over 30 universities and institutions were involved in an extensive testing and experimentation program, which included covert drug tests on unwitting citizens at all social levels, high and low, Native Americans, and foreign. Several of these tests involved administration of LSD to unwitting subjects in social situations. End quote. This is contained within the first 200 words of the official Freedom of Information Act release. Mind you, what we know is almost always surface level. Keep this in mind. Now we have the bridge between Judge Raskin and Scott, the USIA. We have established that the CIA will go to extreme lengths to accomplish their goals, including tampering with the psyche of the domestic populace. Now we can talk about the eerie feelings one encounters while exploring the LSPD headquarters. There's a distinct feeling of being watched upon loading into headquarters. Something about the air, its stagnant nature, the humdum of fluorescent lights seemingly extending through the roof, the emptiness of the structure, the renovations, the silence. It's a bizarre location in and of itself, and perhaps this is for a reason. In fact, the reason is found on a shelf during the events of Boiling Point, as well as in a dossier located on the chief's desk. A section of wall removed has pre-laid cuts to allow cables to be ran through, consistent with techniques used by the USIA for deep cover operations. Peculiar, but what about the dossier? A top-secret manila folder lies open on the chief's desk. Surprisingly, when we interact with it, there is no protest. The contents contained within the file are strict observation protocol related specifically to Judge himself. No other officers are mentioned, not even the rest of D Platoon. David questions this, whether fellow officers are being watched as closely. The answer is ambiguous, though the answer is assumed to be no. David was carefully placed, by top leadership within the USIA. We know this from evidence obtained at the Cherriessa farm. Elaine Raskin and Eve Nader have abandoned social life to start a feminist commune at the Cherriessa Vineyards farm. A former vineyard, Cherriessa was purchased or acquired by Elaine Raskin and Eve Nader sometime later to start Carried from Crisis, which was a domestic abuse relief and response shelter. Here, they worship a feminine entity carved into a massive tree, an entity that seems to be far more alive than we realize. They also launch attacks and targeted kidnappings on sex offenders and rapists. Through blood sacrifice, they feed this goddess-like entity. Elaine Raskin is a former USIA agent, and a conversation between her and Agent Brody can be found detailing a top-secret USIA psychological warfare program. Contained within this correspondence, they mention a Gamma 1 who is implanted within the LSPD and given a leadership role. I will now read the transcript verbatim. Conversation transcript. Subject: Mariposa plant. Agent Brody: Raskin, I will remind you of the importance of this operation and our slim time frame. Many of our agents are stretched thin and unable to keep tabs on Target Gamma 1. You remain our only eyes and ears on the subject, and time is running out. Agent Raskin: Understood. Been keeping tabs on quite a few agencies. Seems I need to dial in on the department fully now. I'm all ears. Agent Brody: Gamma 1 remains utmost priority with our plan to implement him into the department. He has completed his training organized by our advisory team. Once inserted, he will be assigned a leadership position within the department amongst others not in the program. His performance will be monitored thoroughly via a number of factors. His survival is not ensured due to the high-risk nature of work. Agent Raskin: Give me some details, dates, any links, and whoever else is watching him. Agent Brody: We already have an agent you are familiar with within the station monitoring Gamma 1 within a scheduled area. Although we are needing extra eyes, enter the station and head through the department. You will slip through with the identification we have provided. Once you are with him, you will give You will be given extra information on Gamma 1 and our end goal. Do not interact or communicate with any persons other than our agent. Agent Raskin. So, when do we begin? Agent Brody. You will meet in 2 weeks' time. Our agent's location will be provided in separate mapped documents. This is interesting, isn't it? Sounds familiar. We can assume based on this evidence that Gamma 1 refers to Judge. Agent Brody is either the mysterious Evan from Reno or another USIA operative. Why does he need multiple sets of eyes? Who is the agent slipping into the station undercover? So, how is Judge still connected to the USIA? Isn't he a team leader within the LSPD? Yes, absolutely. What is his current connection? Why has he been planted in the first place? What role would he serve? This will be answered later. In their correspondence, I find it interesting that the subject line features the phrase, Mariposa plant. Elaine Raskin references in her audio recordings that the Mariposas are about to bloom, and once again references these cohorts. She also references Gerard Scott, who she believes has sent her a coded message on the back of one of her recruits. Raskin mentions it was the first cohort who attacked the Los Sueños Dam circa 1990. Mariposa is Spanish for butterfly, and the Mariposa plant refers to the Mariposa lily, indigenous to California and northern Mexico. The butterfly is symbolic of change, of transformation. So who are the MLO? Or what are the MLO? The first mention of the MLO can be found in Gerard Scott's cabin during the mission A Lethal Obsession. Scott wants Judge to respond. He almost omnipresently knows that he's going to respond. Based on audio tapes found scattered around his cabin, he believes that Judge and himself are two pieces of the same larger puzzle. He refers to Judge's training and his methods. This is vague, but assumed to be related to the USIA. Gerard has many photos of Judge pinned to his conspiracy boards as well, and upon completing the level with an S rank, we're awarded a picture of D Platoon with various hand-scrawled eyeballs, and all the other faces blocked out except for that of Judge's. Gerard has also stolen many files from his former employers, almost exclusively relating to this secretive psychological operation related to LSD and its dosing of unsuspecting individuals. Alongside these reports are newspaper clippings and articles detailing the deaths of project heads, the connection to Raskin, as well as names of individuals believed to be a part of the first cohort. There are also phrases written in an alien language and featuring a geometric figure with a glaring eye referred to as the Godhead. We spoke of this earlier. What is the first cohort, or the second cohort? To reiterate, a cohort is a group of individuals with shared characteristics. In relation to our stories, cohorts are presumably large, decentralized groups of people without knowledge of one another. They're mentioned by Raskin, Scott, flyers, and talk show hosts. Some are politicians, media executives, etc., while others are combat veterans and former SWAT. We'll discuss the former first. Here is where the not-so-conspiracy starts. During the Ides of March mission in Brissa Cove, former combat veterans have band together under the flag of the Left Behind. They're an extremely dangerous domestic terror group with combat training to boot. This is a brutal response for D Platoon. The Left Behind are targeting Senator Fremont, a politician who proposes to induce a bill that will cut VA funding disproportionately. In response, Left Behind gunmen fire on Fremont's motorcade with sniper rifles and machine gun fire. The senator is struck, and we learn later that he either succumbs to his wounds or resigns from office. Why is this important? California is a majority Democratic state, a stronghold for progressives. A Republican senator in 2025 seems out of the realm of possibility, doesn't it? My thought process makes me question whether Fremont was elected democratically or if he was planted purposefully. Without Fremont's bill, we have no Left Behind, no chaos. Follow me for a moment. Remember chaos, remember the USIA, remember Reno? The Dark Waters DLC provides a unique piece of evidence upon completion. Tobias Gibson's phone, one of the primary UPF suspects, also the leader of the UPF, was communicating with an unknown source. Verbatim, the transcript is as follows. Gibson, time is now. Use UPF for house task. Find Sal. Media should see violence. Never forget what you know now. And, Gibson, no activity seen. Are you still in warehouse? Do not be inebriated. You are needed. You play a significant role. Take UPF and go now. Another guiding hand, shrouded in mystery. Who would benefit from orchestrating high-profile crimes such as these? Who has enough influence to manipulate entire groups of people? Who has enough influence to specifically manipulate terror groups? To what end? Let's take an additional look at David Beaumont. By his own self-admission, the details surrounding his service in Reno are hazy. This we know. We know he met a fast friend named Evan during his service, and Evan promised to never lead him astray. We know prior to both of these events, Judge served in the Armed Forces and later the USIA. All confirmed. The catalyst that kicked off the operation at the Elysian was a text conversation between David and a USIA contact. This is the first suspicious incident that leads to a breakdown of trust between Judge and the rest of the department. The correspondence is as follows. The name of the official is redacted. 1337. Still on for this afternoon at Elysian Hotel. Be there by 1500, no later. Once this is done, it never happened. Judge in response says, at 1338, you need to tell me more about what's going on here. 1338. There is no more. You know what you need to know. 1339, Judge says, I know we go back, but I won't send my men to die without knowing why. At 1341, the source says, if they are your men, and you're still the same man you were, they won't be at risk. 1353, Judge replies back, fuck you. 1357, the unknown source replies, no thanks, maybe later. Black Sentinel are bad news. They have been sniffing around for a long time, including tracking down Gerard Scott. You got to him first. Now they're after something else. Can't say. You'll know when you see it. Judge replies at 1405. And the other guys? At 1407, 1409, and 1410, the unknown source replies, nobodies. Pirates who traveled the coast pillaging. They're out of their league. What they have cannot get into Black Sentinel hands. Would I ever leave you astray? Remember Nevada? Question mark. At 1412, Judge says, fine, I'll get a team together, but one day you're giving me answers. At 1414, the source says, one day. And that is the end of the transmission. This directly places Evan, a USIA operative, in Judge's ear. The nature of their relationship is abstract at best. My personal theory revolves around Evan being Judge's handler. I do not believe Judge understands the gravity of their situation. I imagine the events of Reno, the USIA brainwashing, and programming have severely altered Judge's perception of their interactions. Judge is reported in a medical file given to Dr. Green following the events of Boiling Point as having extremely dulled reactions to stress. Post-Elysian, Detective Reed cannot stop questioning Judge in the events that transpired. The MLO symbol is present, the first time we see it, as well as a strange meeting room hidden behind a concrete wall. The Black Sentinel paramilitary group are attempting to roll over Los Navegantes del Caos by providing them with a fake serum in exchange for Dr. Anthony Schwartz, a former USIA scientist specializing in biological weapons. Their goal ultimately fails with the D Platoon interference. Do you see the connection? Black Sentinel was hunting down Gerard Scott for assistance, coerced or not, to create chemical weapons. Scott, at the time, was a successful domestic terrorist running a ricin production lab. Why does Black Sentinel want WMDs? It's unclear how they managed to secure neurotoxins following the Elysian Hotel, but the neurotoxin was eventually delivered en masse by the Navegantes to Blackwood Pier. To talk about Blackwood Pier, we must finally bring the MLO out of the dark. The Mariposa Lily Organization, or Mariposa Lily Order, is the guiding invisible hand behind every major response D Platoon faces. A small organization budding from the depravity of human experimentation, described by the man with the green gloves as nothing more than mind-broken test subjects, crude but graceful. Described by a radio host outside of Gerard Scott's cabin as the brainchild of the USIA, with Los Sueños being their favorite playground. The host goes on to assume that the MLO are a national organization. We've been following their trail for years, breadcrumb after breadcrumb, culminating in the epic final test scene in A New America. The MLO are victims of brainwashing, chemical manipulation that has permanently altered their mental state. Consisting exclusively of combat veterans and former SWAT members, the MLO is the most dangerous group encountered by D Platoon. They move effectively as a unit, respond to each other's commands, enter and clear rooms with methodical precision, and effectively make use of traps and choke points. They wear a mix of modern and 90s combat gear, Mitch 2000 helmets, M17 gas masks, plate carriers with L-shaped flashlights, hard cases labeled stems, IFAKs, and grenades. Some members cover their faces and heads with a Ranger Green sniper veil, printed on the front with the ashen white image of a Mariposa lily. Some write Sic Semper Tyrannis on their helmets and wear Betsy Ross flag patches on their combat tops. All obscure their faces in one way or another. They speak in code, chanting rehearsed rhetoric that spills from their mouths like flowing water. Some recount combat experiences, particularly related to northern Baghdad. Some speak of currents, the signal, and false fathers. The civilians you encounter during the final mission note that they move like ghosts and are serious business. They are the tactical antithesis to our SWAT team. And if you don't take anything else from this video, take that with you, please. The Mariposa Lily Organization is the antithesis of D Platoon. On September 3rd, 2028 at 22:08 or 10:08 p.m., a group of Los Navegantes soldiers dressed in LSPD-issued uniforms began opening fire on civilians at Blackwood Pier. Community leader Lucia Torres had organized a Clean Up the Pier event to raise money for the failing public infrastructure of Los Sueños. On top of the shooting, chemical weapons were used against the populace. The agent was delivered in aerosol form via metal canisters, hidden within the backpacks of the Navegantes. The Navegantes' mission was a near-total success, killing more than half of the civilians present, including Lucia Torres. This is evidenced by a pamphlet which can be found near the front of headquarters following the mission, as well as her personal belongings in the evidence locker. Based on notes found in Judge's apartment following the events of Boiling Point, the Navegantes are believed to have no further use than to smuggle chemical weapons and explosives into Los Sueños. A note references them being abandoned by their employers. Following the events of the pier, this chemical compound was identified as chemical 4L1, better known as the chemical contained within the package that was secured at the Elysian Hotel. An official report found in the Detectives Bureau at headquarters reads as follows: the observed effects of this chemical agent, as compiled from first responders, are as follows. First, the victim's vision becomes hallucinogenic, quickly followed by bouts of mania and hysteria when administered to non-first and second cohort subjects. The neurotoxin quickly attacks the brain, introducing hemorrhaging and internal bleeding, causing blood to spill from the eyes and other orifices. This causes extreme pain. Subjects report feeling as if their brains are on fire. Their vision is completely altered to a different state of consciousness, and the central nervous system expands the sensations of burning and extreme pain to the nerve endings throughout the body. Within 1 to 2 minutes, the victim's organs fail. The blood vessels burst, causing tensile extremities in the eyeballs to further be exposed. Even low levels of exposure irritate the eyes, causing redness, tearing, and a gritty sensation. Higher doses lead to swelling, severe pain, and temporary blindness due to corneal damage. In extreme cases, permanent vision loss can occur, overall similar to the effects of mustard gas. Targets of this chemical typically collapse into the fetal position, or strangely in some cases, on their knees with their arms outward placed upon their knees, palms facing upward. It is unknown what causes this position to occur. However, it is compared to botulinum toxin and severe burns with the tightening of muscle flexors, similar to when a burn victim has succumbed to being engulfed in flames. The aforementioned tightening of muscles prevents the victims from screaming as the vocal cords break and the larynx is shrunk. Audible gurgles and gasping for air can be heard." End quote. It's difficult to read the rest, but it goes into detail and describes their inability to speak and how heightened emotions cause the effects of the gas to take hold quicker. Neurotoxins, or nerve agents, are a heinous class of chemical weapon that disrupts processes in which nerves send their messages to the rest of the body. Acetylcholinesterase is blocked. This is an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter responsible for bridging the gap between motor neurons and our muscles. Essentially, by blocking these, we have constriction, involuntary muscle movements, and spasms. The resulting death is horrific, as the body tenses in rigid and unnatural jerking motions as the lungs constrict and the afflicted die. Throughout history, many nerve agents have been used against populations, whether in war or by domestic terrorists. One primary example is the use of sarin gas in the 1995 Tokyo subway attack. The gas is a neurotoxic chemical with hemorrhagic properties, a truly horrific way to die. Following the Blackwood Pier attack, the city of Los Sueños devolved into full-scale riots. Los Navegantes del Caos are a small-time pirate organization. The majority of their profit comes from smuggling. Why on earth would they orchestrate a full-scale terror attack? A sophisticated terror attack at that. It seems extremely out of place. And per the correspondence between Judge and the mystery man, he says himself that they are way out of their league. The following mission takes place at the Unity Trust Bank of Los Sueños. Bank manager Dominic Valle has been seen on CCTV pacing back and forth all night between his desk and computer prior to the pier attack. The mission is named All Gods Must Burn and showcases just how far the city has fallen into despair. The bank has been overtaken by rioters, with Black Sentinel mercenaries having made entrance and set up on the lower floors. A previously unknown third group is captured entering and leaving on ISR, but is not present by the time we arrive. The mission is particularly tense with hostile civilian NPCs and well-armed Black Sentinel mercenaries. Numerous secrets can be found throughout the bank, allowing one to uncover a mystery within its walls. First, an admin password must be found, located on a whiteboard on one of the upper levels. This unlocks the admin terminal. Next comes a safe keycard found on a dead security guard, a vault keycard located in a briefcase, and finally, a laptop password located within the safe. Once all parts are assembled, the player can interact with the suspicious laptop found in the upstairs conference room. Once activated, the following message pops up on the laptop, as well as the projector screen. Sending agreement_vault, class red protocol, routing, offshore node, recipient, unidentified, route, chain, obfuscated, status, success. At first glance, we can tell that something has been transferred, but what exactly could have been sent? The class red status denotes the highest level of secrecy and encryption. The offshore bit is more self-explanatory, implying the data has been sent outside of legal judiciary borders. The recipient being unidentified and the route chain obfuscated is a fancy way of saying that the trail has been scrambled. D Platoon is questioning Judge's actions directly as we slink around looking for keycards. They ask us rhetorical questions like, "When did you become a detective?" and badger us by saying that lives are on the line. We're wasting time. They also state that we have no idea of what we just transferred. What we do know is that a piece of evidence earned following this level is an internal record dated August 14th, 1992. The description is as follows. A thick case folder filed August 14th, 1992. The paperwork records the transfer of the Cordova building's ownership into a Cayman Islands Trust, Caledonia Revocable Interest, Ltd. The file is dense with legal jargon, perpetual trustee title, eminent domain protections, a notarization by Vincent Echeverria, then a junior official, validates the transaction. Handwritten notes in the margin question why no vesting schedule was ever filed and point out that no municipal taxes were ever billed. This is incredibly damning evidence of someone obscuring the ownership of the Cordova building. Eminent domain essentially means the government would struggle to pull the ownership records, as they're buried so deeply. The property itself is a permanent, untraceable, and invisible structure. The transfer likely contained deeds, trust structures, offshore account information, etc., etc. Another piece of evidence found is a 2 terabyte SSD found embedded behind a steel plate within the bank's vault itself. Built to withstand detection attempts, it featured a magnetic dampener and RFID shielding. No external marking leads credence to the idea that it is an in-house manufacturing job. Top-level black site-style tools. The contents contained within are unknown, but I imagine it was a dead man's drop. A little black book, if you will, most likely belonging to Vale. What happened to Dominic Vale, CEO of United Trust Bank? Stepping over the corpses of Black Sentinel mercenaries and carefully avoiding debt cord covering the floor, we stand before the bank vault. Your money is gone, spray painted on the floor. All gods must burn, spray painted on the homemade explosives. Using the admin password and keycard from earlier, we're able to enter the bank vault. Contained within is a horrific scene. A bound man faces away from us, sitting upright in his chair. As we circle around him, we notice it's Vale, covered in blood, eyes locked forward with a cell phone sticking out of his gaped mouth. The phone begins to ring. Answer it. It's for you. Dependent on your actions in the level, the voice over the phone is different. If you had transferred the archives, this is what is heard. Curiosity always gets the better of you, David. What was on that drive? It was automated. I didn't do anything. But it was your initiative. Once again, fulfilling everything we hoped for you. I don't work for you. You fall lightly. You exist to serve in the same machine we inhabit. You just haven't accepted its architecture. You're manipulating this entire city. How far does this go? You stand at the precipice of something much greater that is already in motion. Destruction and creation are the same act when viewed from opposite ends. You'll see for yourself. Soon. Enough. The voice calls us out directly, and if we didn't complete the transfer, Judge states, "Wait, I know you," implying this isn't the first time David's heard this strange, methodical voice. The bank isn't just holding money, as evidenced in Vale's note inside the bank vault. It was never about the money. In Vale's own words, it was about burning us all. Everything Void does leaves something open to interpretation. This DLC is no different. The full conspiracy will never be known. What is known is that this meeting was never an accident. David was meant to stand here, within the vault to receive the call and follow the trail. David was meant to respond to Gerard Scott's cabin. David was meant to apprehend or kill Elaine Raskin, dependent on the player's actions. Everything was guided from the start, from the very beginning. The voice on the phone, the MLO, is the guiding hand. They've sown the seeds of distrust throughout the entire city. They've caused mass hysteria, civil unrest, martial law, and widespread chaos. They have orchestrated everything from the very beginning. Again, a shadow source observes us from the distance, just out of reach, just beyond the veil. Their essence hangs in the air. They were just here, and we just missed them. Once again, they have abandoned their new hires. In this case, Black Sentinel, to continue the grunt work. One thing I find particularly interesting about this part, and I'm going off the script right now, is that the MLO in this, now after reading all of this, the MLO in particular had targeted Gerard Scott, who was operating under the radar for a considerable amount of time. They had targeted him so Black Sentinel couldn't get a hold of him for the ricin manufacturing. Back to the script. This leads us to the final mission, A New America. By far the most difficult Ready or Not mission to date, with one of the most difficult challenges thus far. A New America takes place within the Cordova building, which contains City Hall and the records department for the entire city. This is the building whose title, whose ownership has been obscured all these years. Beginning on the 19th floor and moving upwards, we are led like lambs to the slaughter. The intelligence briefing has an interesting suspects tab attached to it. The MLO's danger level is listed as combat ready, though all other identifiers are redacted. Loading into the level feels strange, whether it be the lighting or the wide open corridors. Something is very wrong within the Cordova building. We are once again under FISA's operational command for this mission. Our comms with talk are interrupted as we push forward. Static fills the air. The team that had made entry before us radios over an open frequency, warning us that they had found a signal transmitter device. The device seems to be blocking signals to the explosives. Handcuffing civilians reveal that the entire building is rigged. Here is another interesting part of the lore as a whole. I want us to take special care as we look at the lower gallery. But over on the wall, a picture hangs of Mr. Cordova shaking the hand of an Asian individual in transfer of these art pieces that we are surrounded by. Keep that in mind. As we engage the MLO and Black Sentinel soldiers, hardened combatants with nigh perfect aim and brilliant squad-based tactics, we realize that we have finally met our equal. The MLO, as mentioned earlier, communicate extremely well. Their coordinated movements, use of forced entry, and room clearing make them formidable opponents. On more than one occasion, whilst attempting to wedge off doors, cells have breached and eliminated my AI team. As we make our way to the third floor of our grievous ascent, talk has been replaced entirely by the MLO Triggerman, presumably. There is some speculation that the Triggerman and the voice over the radio are separate entities. One theory suggests that the Radio Man is an MLO-activated sleeper within the LSPD or FISA. Another theory suggests it's the agent who made entry into LSPD headquarters on behalf of Elaine Raskin. My favorite theory is that it's Evan from Nevada. Our new talk, as he references himself, makes several unique claims and draws parallels between our work and the world the MLO exists within. I want to take a moment to discuss the voice lines in greater detail, as they are extremely important for the overarching conspiracy, and they give us first-hand insight into the minds of these individuals. Here are some quotes. Observation has become worship. Soon, your hands will be your own. Chains of custody? No, These are chains of obedience. Another sacrifice bound by your hands. We collect them all. Acknowledged, accepted, inevitable. That's the lesson. Every wire you cut is one we placed. Every fuse is part of our design. You're inheriting our mission. This won't affect your grade or rank in our eyes. You're still S tier to us. That last one was for fun, but it is a real voice line, though. I find this haunting, given the context of A New America. The MLO want to recruit Judge, thus their extreme effort to put forth this final test for him. The MLO are also extremely familiar with Judge, calling him by name, his first name, and speaking to him directly over the radio. I noticed while playing that the MLO soldiers are much more likely to comply with Judge versus Black Sentinel operators. Do they know each other? Has Judge simply forgotten their relationship? The MLO collectively do this as well, but here are several of their voice lines. A strange man will come to visit you. Do not accept his offer. We'll circle back to this. Keep this in mind. You call it surrender. We call it calibration. Very well. Prophecy fulfilled. The 7 towers will align their gaze to the stars, and the new towers will arise as the Godhead bestows us the invisible guiding hand for America and the world. Pause. The Godhead? We've heard about this before. Referenced in Gerard Scott's Cabin, a bizarre geometric shape with a glaring eye labeled USIA Godhead Complex. Also, this is referenced in Judge's apartment after completing all 3 Boiling Point missions with an S rank. Judge has drawn all the comparisons we have up until this point and then some. He succumbed to the wild web that is Los Sueños, and we'll get to that eventually. The 7 towers being referenced are vague. There are no glaring references to 7 towers in any historical or biblical context. This leads me to believe that it is a construct created beneath the USIA's Godhead Complex, or what is referred to as the Targeted Manipulation Project, or TMP. If we were splitting hairs, we could say that this is a reference to the 7 deadly sins, or the 7 primary founding fathers of America. Considering the context of this mission, its name, and the MLO's objective to create societal collapse in order to institute rebirth, this could be entirely plausible. Frequently, the MLO reference false fathers, even saying directly, "Damn all false fathers." It is unknown exactly what the MLO is referencing. I have been unable to find any single damning piece of evidence through my research that draws a clear line to the false fathers. I do believe, however, that there are several angles that should be examined more closely to conclude who or what they are. As of the release of this video, their identity is a mystery to me. I believe through some of the MLO voice lines that they may be referencing current politicians, policymakers, etc., including the current mayor of Los Sueños, who is killed in the event of this mission. I could imagine them referencing the remnants of the first cohort as well. All is speculative, though. There's also the odd chance that the MLO is referencing their creators within the USIA, though that is one hell of a conspiracy theory. Now, here are some more voice lines. We do not exist to destroy. We do not exist to destroy and escape. It is the heralding of a coming age. David, everything you stand for is built upon illusion and deception. What you call values are nothing more than hollow vessels laid forth by powerless people. Referencing Judge by name must have drawn a hell of a lot of suspicion from his squad mates. Imagine your team leader being called by his government name as you take on the most dangerous mission of your career. You think to yourself, is he a plant? Was he a part of this and backed out? Though we'll most likely never see the full picture of David's connection to the MLO and USIA, it is confirmed that his squad, quote, apologized, end quote, to him in the form of an expensive watch. This is found in Judge's apartment alongside case file Lily, which Detective Sidney Reed had forwarded to Judge following the operation, if completed with an S rank. In her own words, it was meant to act as an olive branch, signifying she no longer held suspicion over Judge. The state of the apartment showcases that Judge has inherited Reed's work, which we mentioned earlier. Now more voice lines. The system breathes through all of us. Let it exhale. The body obeys. The current keeps passing. You can cuff the form, not the function. Do you think we fear death? We've met them already. And I believe this one in particular is not a reference to combat or military service, but rather a direct reference to their brainwashing. I imagine prior to coding the MLO, they were psychologically broken by inducing fear under the influence of psychoactive drugs. Once the mind is gone, you are left with a blank canvas from which you can mold your weapons. I believe the MLO are more than just test subjects, and more to come on this later. I can feel their heartbeat through the floor. The voice will call us home soon. The cleansing flame awaits to burn away all that is impure. Hold fast for the signal. And upon allied deaths, they say things such as fallen, sub-project terminated, and sacrifice for the greater cause. These are all rather ceremonious when referencing their brothers in arms, but very pragmatic when referencing the death of Black Sentinel members. Upon contact with D Platoon, they say various things such as, D Platoon, calling them by name. The ritual begins. Prepare the altar, and begin exercise. These robotic phrases show their activation in real time. All of their prior training mixed with their programming is showcased beautifully with these voice lines. When hesitating, MLO members say things such as, it's not meant to feel like this. I remember a name, and then nothing. We thought the pain was erased, but it's still here. And then here in these voice lines, we get to see a unique break in that coding, a glimmer, a sliver, if you will, of real human consciousness that has been hidden beneath a thick veil. And speaking of veils, I find it so interesting that the MLO referenced this veil that David has covering his eyes, yet they wear a physical representation of this, a sniper veil painted with the Mariposa lily. More quotes. Do you feel it? The air shifting? Sanctify the breach. The cycle turns again. We've waited through lifetimes for this. I believe this is in reference to their drug-induced psychosis. Certain chemicals, when ingested, cause time to warp and bend. Individuals who ingest dimethyltryptamine, or DMT for example, report feeling like years have passed, when in reality the hallucinations only last around 15 minutes. LSD, or lysergic acid diethylamide's effects can last for well over 15 hours, depending on dosage. I am fully confident that MLO cultists are convinced this operation has been planned for thousands of years. More quotes. Obedience is silence. Silence is purity. Unseen, unremembered, unburied. Flesh to cold, cold ash. Flesh to cold, cold ash. This one is unique, and it's one of the only times that we hear repeated mumbling. It's clearly a phrase, and I can't really tell if he's saying flesh to code or flesh to code. But nonetheless, the MLO soldier holds this phrase in some type of reverence. Perhaps to him it is more akin to a prayer. MLO soldiers are all known to carry and adorn themselves with keepsakes. In the evidence locker, we see a box labeled MLO Keepsake, following a New America. Inside are files said to contain photos of Judge from before his time at the LSPD that have been slightly burned in an effigial fashion. The description says that everyone who handles these possessions feels uneasy. Sitting atop the files is a small charm featuring a featuring a triquetra and an enamel Mariposa lily. It looks like it's meant to be secured onto the wearer's kit, like an adornment versus something that you would hide in a pocket. Void, you fumbled the bag by not having this visible, and there are already perfect character models. Something else interesting is that, and I have no idea how to recreate this, but on my first playthrough, and I hope I have video footage, which I'm showing you now if I have it, there is a mannequin hand holding a Mariposa lily flower that can be found at the top of the stairs in the evidence cart. That seems like a pretty telling sign, and it's unique because it shows that Judge doesn't know how it got there, and he says specifically that I have no idea how this got here. And the only other object within the entire department that he says that about is a Santa Muerte statue, or Saint Death, that is found sometime around, which I think it's around Home Invasion. We're off the script again here. I'm just blabbing about. I'm fairly certain it's during Narcos when that Santa Muerte statue is delivered to the station. And I find that really interesting because it shows that people are getting in to LSPD headquarters with no problem, which we already knew happened following the transcript between Agent Brody and Raskin. But continuing on with quotes and whatnot. They reference dreams, which references Los Sueños as a whole. It is, after all, referred to as the City of Dreamers. Here are some more quotes. Fractures. Little tiny shards. Perhaps related to a fractured mind? They told you we were monsters. They will watch through the static. The outpost was north of Baghdad. The ground trembled when they fired from the hills. And then a great silence fell. The only memories they have that they were allowed to keep are of war. Imagine that. You witness indescribable things in the name of patriotism, and now that is all that is left of you. Your only unique personality trait is your combat experience, while the rest has been systematically erased from your brain. The MLO are a terribly sad faction when you break them down into their core components. They were America's best, who were either coerced, forced, or volunteered for this program. If they volunteered, I imagine it was under the guise of patriotism. Once a soldier, always a soldier. Oaths don't break overnight. They don't terminate at the end of your service. At the end of your service, your DD-214 is just a piece of paper. I feel you here. Sanctified. The flesh remembers nothing. Sic semper tyrannis. You bring the law, we bring the reason it exists. Every single one of these voice lines can be broken down individually, and I could talk about all of them in depth, but for the sake of brevity, I've kept it condensed. It also kind of reads funny when you're trying to do one at a time. If you wish to listen to me talk about every voice line individually, please let me know in the comment section down below. This last one, rather, the last two, stand out to me tremendously. Sic semper tyrannis is a Latin phrase that means, thus always to tyrants. It's been screamed for hundreds of years following the targeted assassination of Julius Caesar. It appears scrawled on the helmets of the MLO, and in earlier versions of the game it appeared written on their backs. The MLO truly believe they are toppling a tyrannical government. They believe that Los Sueños is corrupted at every level, corrupted from top to bottom, essentially a modern-day Sodom and Gomorrah. Therefore, it must be returned to dust before it can rise. The Phoenix is never explicitly used by the group in any way, shape, or form, but its symbolism fits extraordinarily well here. The next phrase is the most important of all of them. This is where I could go into a tangent on the Coco conspiracy that I'm sure I'm not the only one who believes in. So deep breath. Earlier I spoke of how the MLO serves as the antithesis of D Platoon. The thesis in this case, D Platoon, is the status quo, the expected, There's always going to be violence, crime, and chaos. Chaos exists everywhere. As a result of chaos, order has been created. Order is rigidly defined as the arrangement or disposition of people or things in relation to a particular sequence, pattern, or method. That's a mouthful. So generally speaking, order is defined as an authoritative command or a form of authoritative command. Chaos is defined as complete disorder or confusion. Bizarre, isn't it? Doesn't the MLO quote match perfectly with these two definitions? You bring the law, we bring the reason it exists. This is a chicken and egg situation. Which came first? Was it order or chaos? Was Judge's secretive time in Reno, or the time spent with the USIA, a building block in their establishment of another cohort? Was the USIA fearful of their creation, realizing they couldn't control them and creating their equal? The MLO and Judge exist in the same yin-yang harmony. One complements the other. Upon completing a New America with an S rank, the player is awarded a tattoo called Duality. This tattoo's description is as follows. This mark shows order and chaos shape man. Knowing one invites the other. It binds you to accept irreconcilable opposites as you see yourself in them. Irreconcilable opposites. One hand shakes the other, two sides of the same coin. The iconography surrounding the tattoo is unique as well. It shows a keyhole with two crossed skeleton keys, the moon and the sun in tarot style, Malone Labe in Greek, the bust of a man, presumably a Roman emperor, whose visage is light on one side and dark and tumultuous on the other. And finally, the Roman numeral inscription, IX.III.MMXXVIII. This translates to September 3rd, 2028, which was the date in which the Boiling Point DLC kicked off. Lucia Torres, community leader and organizer of the Clean Up the Pier event, was murdered on this day. Though it's not directly stated, Judge seems to have more than a professional level relationship with Lucia Torres, evidenced by his slip in the mission briefing where he calls her Lucy. I believe that David was placed at the head of D Platoon specifically to combat the MLO. I do not believe David is even remotely aware of his programming. I also don't believe the MLO is under any operational jurisdiction anymore. I believe they have effectively gone rogue and broken away from their USIA fathers. Where does this fit into the story? How does it fit into the story? In real life, the CIA proposed Operation Northwoods in the early 1960s. The concept behind the project was to allow CIA operatives the autonomy to perpetrate a mass casualty event or terror attack in and around the Miami region to justify military action in Cuba. That is a very brief, condensed version of Operation Northwoods. This style of attack is known as a false flag operation, and is not as alien a concept as it seems. Some historical examples include the Mukden incident in 1931, the shelling of Manila in 1939, and the Russian apartment bombings of 1999. It stands to reason that the MLO could have been created to perform false flag attacks. We have established several times that these cohorts are a mesh of militaristic personnel and policymakers. We understand that the dam attack in 1990 was perpetrated by the first cohort. Through the process of creating and neutralizing chaos, a sort of status quo is formed. Attacks happen, panic spreads, justification is made, change happens. Following a brutal struggle to discover the location of the signal disruptor device, we find the remains of the team that came before us. We listened to them get gunned down over the radio as we made our entry, and now here they paint the walls of either the conference room, the press room, or city council chambers. Spoofing the detonator symbol, we must fight upstairs for the final push. Our new talk calls us by name once again, and tells us to meet him in the courtroom for our final test. Our real talk is desperately pleading with us to hurry, as Cordova is not the only building wired for detonation. A citywide evacuation is underway, and the National Guard is incoming. We make entry, eliminating the MLO fanatics barricaded behind the huge wooden pews. One last enemy stands before us. Our direct opposite. Our counter. Here we see the duality of man in full color. A .357 Magnum tucked inside of his holster, arms outstretched with his right hand extending towards the sky, clutching a homemade detonator. The imagery here evokes that of Fight Club's finale. He wears a homemade headdress, like a shaman deep in the Amazonian rainforest would. It stands in stark contrast to his tactical gear. A massive Mariposa lily headdress with an attached half of a theater mask, grimacing in horror. Beside him, an ornately framed photo of the Elysian Hotel with the word "Remember" written in red ink. Our entire playthrough, beginning at the 4U gas station, has culminated in this single defining moment. We, the player, have two choices here. If we were successful in spoofing the signal and the triggerman realizes he can't detonate the explosives, we can either disarm his dead man switch located inside of his vest, or detonate them ourselves. My first playthrough ended in the latter. I pressed the detonator button believing it to be the disarm key, and watched in horror as the glass shattered throughout the courtroom. The low rumble of shifting concrete followed by the thunderous collapse of the building across from us. We failed our objective, but we need not worry about that. Talk is silent. Our team is silent. The triggerman is silent. For a moment, as we stand watching the rubble accumulate beyond where the building stood, we think, I had a choice, and I chose chaos. Upon ending the mission, instead of reloading into the station, we load into a prison cell. A lone, solitary cell separated by an additional security door. It's dark, silent, and the walls are covered in hundreds of tally marks and a crude visage of who is presumably Elizabeth. We sit quietly in our new home for a few moments before walking towards the bars. Another day gone, the humdrum of low-wattage electrical lights crackling as a cockroach scurries away. Suddenly, the outer door buzzes open. An unfamiliar shape takes form backlit from the hallway. An average-height Asian man, presumably in his 40s or 50s, dressed sharply in contrasting navy blues and bright forest greens. His glowing green tie matches his skin-tight gloves. Bizarre. We've never caught wind of anybody matching this description. Is he our herald from the MLO? You will never know my name, and if you spoke it, nobody would believe you. Strange. Another ghost? He speaks clearly and deliberately, as if he'd rehearsed this conversation his entire life. He tells us that no cameras or guards are aware of our conversation. Nobody, as a matter of fact, knows this conversation has ever happened or will ever know. He goes on to ask us how we manage to keep pulling ourselves out of insanely dangerous operations unscathed. He calls us an experiment from the USIA meant to heal on command and not think for himself. He then delves into brief overviews of the children of the first and second cohorts, who are crude yet graceful and worship mere symbols. Here he is highlighting the MLO's reverence of the Betsy Ross flag and the Mariposa lily. He refers to them as zealots, which, if our encounter in Cordova is anything to go off of, they are nothing if not fanatical. Devout soldiers, like Monolith from the Stalker series. His allegiance is muddy. Who does he work for? He seems to have intimate knowledge of the USIA. Perhaps a former agent? Analyst? He talks about them with such disdain, almost as if the dislike comes from experience. Yet he seems to operate at a much higher level of clearance than the USIA alone. Who is above the intelligence agencies? ODNI? Is it a secret society? A cabal of elites? How could we possibly climb the ladder any higher? Who is our Shadow Man? The USIA, he says, attempt to twist the fabric of reality with tools they do not understand and should not have access to. They are only good at crunching variables, and he suggests that the MLO and USIA are both slaves to ideology. He says we dangle on the precipice of something rarer. He then extends an offer of authorship to move beyond agency, beyond choice, freedom. I find this particularly interesting because the only other person, and I understand that precipice is a word that can be used to describe any peak, but he says precipice, and the only other person to say precipice is our MLO Talk friend. Next, he comments on the MLO directly calling them faceless flower children and referencing their brainwashing as nothing more than mind-broken test subjects attempting to absorb you into their collective. On the other hand, he says the USIA only wants to remake us in their own image. Either party would succeed if they had got to David first. I find this interesting. In this ending, Judge is devoid of allegiance himself, a blank and capable canvas that any of the three groups would benefit greatly from having amongst their ranks. This shadow organization has gotten to him first, though, and that, I believe, makes all the difference. He references their plan in bloom, a nod to the MLO and David's use of the explosive detonator. He warns that if Judge rejects his offer now, that the MLO will lay claim and make him their vessel. The concept of a vessel is one that isn't totally explained in game, but the MLO's soldiers frequently refer to Judge as the vessel. My theory suggests the MLO wish to use David's physical body as a shell for their ideology. Using their strings and resources, they could reintegrate him into LSPD or another department to continue gathering resources, expanding influence. The MLO ultimately wants to topple the current United States government, displacing all political leaders and restarting the country, right? You're going to need a bigger boat to do that. I cannot imagine why else the MLO would want Beaumont so badly. Perhaps you have a theory. I'd love to hear them. Please let me know. To conclude this bizarre encounter, the man with the green glove says, "I came here to neither save nor kill you. I came simply to ask, are you ready to no longer be?" This brings us right back to who exactly this character is. What level do they operate at exactly? He says we when offering David a choice. What group can turn people into ghosts that has not already been listed? It reminds me of the fictional Providence organization from the new Hitman series, a shadowy cabal of elusive billionaires that dictate and govern from the shadows. This organization, hilariously enough, was dictated and governed by three elites whom had faked their deaths and disappeared. I can't help but think this individual is outside of the intelligence community, but no further information has been revealed. David canonically accepts his offer, to which the man says, "A wise decision, Mr. Beaumont. Step through with me, there is no light here." In an instant, he walks backwards out of the door, and the encounter is over. Presumably, Judge goes off to work within this bizarre shadow group. This is, however, not the canonical ending, as there is another ending that is unlocked after completing all 3 DLC missions on S tier. Instead of taking the detonator into our own hands at Cordova, we equip our multi-tool and carefully deactivate the dead man's switch on the triggerman's vest. Instead of returning to headquarters, we're greeted instead with our apartment. Home, sweet home is a far cry from the barren apartment we're standing within. A seedy sex shop across the street, most likely somewhere in North Hills. Run down, neon, covered in filth. At least we're a few stories up, so we're less likely to catch a stray. Across the street, we see a strange man wearing a navy trench coat, green tie, and green gloves. Almost as soon as we notice him, a garbage truck stops in front of him, and then he simply vanishes. Instead, a scantily clad woman stands exactly where he was. Was she there all along? Was it just my imagination? Your mind spirals as you head over to the microwave. Leftover Chinese takeout again. You heat your meal in silence in the glow of the whirring microwave. The only other sounds are the streets outside and loud music from your neighbors. The city that never sleeps is supposed to be a coast away. You finish your meal and walk past your contraband radio, a large Motorola APX 6500 that disappeared from the motor pool about a year ago. Nothing. Quiet, surprisingly. You spend more than your fair share of time sitting by the radio, in silence, waiting for another call. You realize you're getting older. You think of your daughters, your wife, where they possibly could have gone all those years ago. The thought is fleeting as the radio crackles to life. A robbery in progress. Suspects are barricading their position. Just opened fire on 2 patrolmen in 213 Park. That's not too far from home. I keep Kit in my car anyways. You rush out the door, your shadow cast across the Mariposa lily you've drawn on your wall. In all seriousness, that's only a small amount of fluff for this mini-mission. You absolutely do have a phantom encounter with the Green Gloves man, and Judge does seem to have tactically acquired a mobile radio, which is the only decoration in his house. The furniture consists of 3 tables and a mattress set on the ground. One table houses a radio, one houses a .416 carbine, suppressor, and cleaning supplies. Judge comments that besides hitting the range and disassembling and reassembling his weapons, he doesn't have any other hobbies, and that he desperately needs them. Behind us sits the closed bathroom and a locker-style safe filled with additional pistols and rifles. Judge has a modest collection of high-end firearms that are maintained far beyond operational standards. These include the HK-416, Mark 17 DMR, the FN 509, 57, and a Mark 18. The wiki hints that these may not all be collected as a hobby, but rather for self-preservation following the DLC's events. The wall above his mattress is filled with newspaper articles, clippings, evidence, and handwritten notes. Judge has portions of the wall dedicated to the Spider Organization, The Hand, USIA operatives Elaine and Gerard, Black Sentinel, and the MLO. It seems that Judge has totally devolved and fallen into the conspiracy. The massive hand-scrawled Mariposa lily is on the center of the wall, and closest to it is every shred of evidence from headquarters and Sydney's personal stash. The drawings left on her desk, aerial photographs from the Elysian, and branching past connecting all of the other major criminal players in Los Sueños. Alas, even here, with all of the evidence laid out before us, we still have no concrete answers. We have no new evidence. The trail essentially goes cold. This is where Void has sank their grubby claws into my brain. The gameplay pisses me off so badly, though I keep crawling back like a whipped dog to uncover more of this conspiracy. Who is the man with the green gloves? What is David's connection to the MLO now? Is the man with the green gloves the same guy we saw shaking Mr. Cordova's hand in the picture contained within the Cordova building? Is that possible, or am I just drawing comparisons because both are of Asian heritage? Is he truly the antithesis, or did his programming fall short? What if David was not Gamma 1 at all? I believe too much evidence suggests that he is, but nevertheless it's worth exploring the idea. The MLO is my favorite faction presented in media in a long time, and after playing Boiling Point I knew I had to do something more related to them. I've even been going as far as compiling some kit for some behind-the-scenes stuff. Maybe even a live-action thing. Wink wink. Don't get your hopes up though. Not too high at least. overall, I hope you have enjoyed this breakdown and analysis, and I hope it helps you on your quest to understand this insane portion of lore contained within Ron. I know I didn't cover everything, and I do not believe it's possible to cover everything related to this without making like a 30,000 word. This right now currently is at 10,200 words. Maybe I'll drop this in like a Google Doc or something so you guys can look at it. But this has been a big project for me. And it's my first undertaking in a video essay. But there's just so much. This is the major overarching story of the game, which was only referenced in breadcrumbs up until now. And now putting it all together, it's like there's a straight line that's broken in several different ways. It's not really a straight line, is it? It's this whirring, winding path of craziness, and everything leads to something else, but none of it is concrete enough to, really put your finger on what the fuck is going on, most of all of the evidence is circumstantial at best, And knowing Void, they're the poster children for keeping stuff locked up and hidden, and I understand that, part of good storytelling is never to give away the whole story, and I do appreciate that. And I talk a lot of shit about Void Interactive because their gameplay pisses me off beyond belief. But Void does one thing perfectly, and that is their storytelling. It is the craziest. It is the most intense and believable story. When it comes to, how would you spin a SWAT horror story? How would you spin it any other way than how Void has presented it? Without doing more, as an overarching idea, this has just been one massive horror story. And the fact that there is a group, or multiple groups, these cohorts controlling Los Sueños and presumably the United States as a whole is absolutely incredible. It is inferred that the MLO are a national organization. They are the guiding hand, the invisible hand. Now their interest with David and whatnot is up for interpretation, but the old saying goes, the more you learn, the less you know. And I could not agree more, given the conspiracy and the depths of this conspiracy. How could we possibly get more fucked than this? And where are they gonna go from here? What's the... I think something that's really interesting. Again, this is all off the script now. We're done with the script. I think something really interesting with the MLO is this man with the green gloves, right, being present and operating at a higher level. Whether he be Office of the Director of National Intelligence, or whether he be some type of private group. One commenter said, one of my viewers said, he could be part of the Green Dragon Society, which is like a secret society related to Japanese and Tibetan individuals. Not a whole lot of information on that group either. He could be, any secret. I really think a secret society would be wild. How Void would tie that in, I don't know, because I'm not in their shoes. I can sit here and speculate all day. I wonder if he's part of the Knights of the Eastern Calculus. I have no idea. Considering the MLOs... okay, so you look at the Left Behind, for example, right? They have the ability to infiltrate the Secret Service, which is really, really incredible. That level of reach is unheard of. And the MLO has infiltrated government. They have infiltrated both local and federal government. They have military agents, operators, all sorts of people. And they're a small group in comparison to the rest of these groups. And the MLO specifically is able to manipulate other groups to do their bidding, right? So you have the MLO using Los Navegantes to smuggle in these chemical weapons as well as these explosive devices. And then they have Black Sentinel as muscle, who they think are competent. And Judge, in his writings, goes on to assume that it's either they're just like Navigantes to the MLO, where they're just using them as muscle, or they're trying to assimilate them and make the group bigger, which would make sense because you see the MLO attempting to... It seems like they're trying to assimilate Judge, right? Possibly D Platoon even as a whole, because people follow Judge. You know, his team follows him, and he's a good leader, as evidenced by his conversation at the Elysian, or with Evan from the Elysian. He says that he's not going to, send his men to die without knowing what the hell's going on. He won't tell his men to do something he wouldn't do himself, right? And, man, this is just a fucking web, and I can't wait for more. I haven't watched any video essays. I know Shane, No One Cares, put out one about this. I think there may be another video essay style video on this. On this topic. I don't know. I haven't looked. I haven't watched. I'm probably not going to be totally honest. I might watch the Shane video coming up, but this is all theories and stuff pulled directly from the game and from the wiki. A lot of my research was re-watching over and over and over again my own pre-recorded footage. So I don't know what you're seeing right now on the screen because I haven't done the video yet. So hopefully you see something cool. But we'll explore everything else later as it comes. If you like this, let me know. If you hated it, let me know. If you think this is dumb, let me know. You won't hurt my feelings. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope this helps you on your quest to enjoy. And if it doesn't help you on your quest, I hope it help, or to understand it. I hope it, gives you something to listen to. I hope you MLO fanatics out there like me are just itching for some lore. Those guys are so fucking cool. Void, that is the coolest character model you have ever made. I remember the guys from Cherryessa Farm in the early alpha. I remember those guys very vividly, and those guys were terrifying. I can't wait to see what you guys do next, and fix your recoil. But again, gang, you guys are awesome, and if you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We have more content on the way as always. Something for everybody, no doubt. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know down below in the comment section. That is the best place to reach me, to get a hold of me. And I read every comment. I reply to any questions you have. If you want to play Ready or Not, the game, the basis of this video essay, then that will be in the description as well. And remember to mind the gap, stalkers. Mind the gap. And have a good one.